Hello, BookTube. A while ago, Christopher Russell, the cartoon hedgehog of our little corner of BookTube, made a video about just a handful of books that he liked, some more than others, that he wanted to talk to you about, and recommend. Just book conversation, just formless book conversation. And I made a response video where I did the same thing, and that has now taken on a life of its own. I so much love doing this. So I've now made a bunch of videos, just hauling up a handful of books and talking about them. I thought I would continue to do that today. A number of you have made requests for fiction, for the made-up stories to enter the list. I think a couple have crept into this list. Don't get used to it. But the first one is definitely fiction, and it's for the gays. You got to have something for the gays. This is by Tom Dolby, and at the time, the publicity information and also the industry journals said that this was kind of a gay, bright lights, big city. It's called Trouble Boy, and it's exactly what you would expect from a slim contemporary gay novel. Everybody smokes, everybody's nihilistic, everybody bed hops, and the main character is in some ways a purer soul than that. He would kind of like a little more. It sounds hokey, but a lot of times the main character in books like this, and oh my god, I've read so many gay novels like this, is actually looking for love. And when you think about it, when you dig down deep into what is being implied but not said about the love that is being looked for in these books, I believe that when you dig down deep into that, you find an insult, a fairly caustic insult. Not just about heterosexual love, but about the idea of love at all, that I really don't like. And I'm not claiming that there's any kind of hive mind among the gays, and I'm not claiming that Tom Dolby does that knowingly in this book. But it's when this book and the main character starts to want something a little more complicated than that this book redeems itself and is actually pretty enjoyable. Pretty enjoyable read. For contemporary gay fiction, this is pretty enjoyable, pretty well done. And I think a debut. If I'm right about that, it's all the more impressive. Then we have something by Catherine Rudy. This is a terrific book. No idea how affordable it is. I got it from the publisher years and years and years ago, and it was pretty expensive then. But it's wonderful if you love this particular niche subject. This is called Postcards on Parchment. And it is about all the various ways that books were used in the Middle Ages. If you're not familiar with the history of books, you might think, well, surely they were used to read. But no, it was much, much more than that. They were used for all kinds of things. And they traveled a lot more than you would think. Individual books traveled a lot more than you would think. There are whole branches of textual study that are all about not the words on the page, but the pages themselves and what's in between them, what's stuck in the cracks, what the blank page at the back of the book was used for, or the blank pages at the back of a book were used for, and what they tell you about the owners and the change in owners. Because in many, many cases, if you went to St. Paul's or wherever, Leiden or what, if you bought a book, first of all, it was a huge outlay of money. It was rarer, much rarer than the present day. If you bought a good quality book and you brought it home and maybe you have 10 others, or even 100 others, the blank pages, what blank pages there are in any of those books, might be the only blank paper in your house. This author is lively in her intelligence and also flexible in her curiosity, and that just makes this wonderful, just a wonderful work of the history, the older life of these physical objects that we all know so well. Then we have David Nywart. This is his book of Orcas and Men. This is about killer angels. Killer angels. Killer whales. Killer angels is not on this list, I promise. I would be tempted to, but no. This is about orcas. It's a natural history of orcas. It's pretty good. There are problems with natural histories of orcas that we just have to live with. Same as the problems with whales, which is that so much of their life is just not reachable by us. We cannot study it. We cannot even know about it. How deep do orcas dive? And what do they do when they're diving down deep? Do they have names for each other? They have regional accents. That much we know. But do they have names for each other? Almost certainly. What is the nature of those names? How is it known that there's a name? Do they converse when they are hunting? Do they coordinate their hunts through language as opposed to instinct, whatever that means, or body language? Do they use language to coordinate hunts? It certainly looks like they do. And if so, what could that possibly mean? What would that possibly mean? This author doesn't stress it as strongly as some authors have, never on the subject of killer whales. Maybe I just feel this way because I've met these animals in the wild. And when you're on the water in a kayak or a canoe, and a group of these things suddenly shows up, there are precious few feelings you will have that will make you feel more helpless, more completely helpless. I guess if you're in an elevator and it drops the floor before it stops itself, you'll feel the same way. Just a complete blank of helplessness, where it's not that you have to think quick. It's that if this situation goes against you, there's literally nothing you can do. Maybe that I think that way about orcas, but this book nevertheless strongly implies that these are the aliens that we should be studying instead of pointing our telescopes out. And it's wonderful. The author does a really good job. Then we have an older book. This is by John Pope Hennessy, and this is his book, The Portrait in the Renaissance, an older art book about what portraiture meant in the Renaissance, when it underwent, like every other plastic art, like every other human invention, underwent an enormous quantum jump in its nuance and its creativity and its technicality. This author is wonderful to read just in general. I mean, he could write about walking to the corner and taking a taxi to the theater, and it would be the best 30 pages you'd have ever read. So I'll take anything that I can get on him, but I'm also fascinated by Renaissance portraits, some of which are very odd, inhuman, very intentionally inhuman, others of which are grotesquely verisimilitude. So, all sorts of attitudes going on there, and always fun to read about. Then we have Roberto Colasso. This is an author whose books, I don't usually get along with his books. They usually strike me as him just vaporing on, formlessly, from one thought to the next. To rub salt in the wound, he often does those kinds of formless, meandering, bloviating books on subjects that I like. A particular painter who's one of my all-time favorites, or Franz Kafka. But here, in this book, he's on very solid ground. He's writing about his own technical, personal experiences in ways and in a time frame in which the facts can be verified or contested by living people. And boy, does it bring out the best in his storytelling. I mean, he's a good storyteller, I admit that, even in his formless books. But here it brings out the best. This is his little book, The Art of the Publisher, about his experience in the publishing world. A tiny little thing, but wonderful. Oh my, wonderful. Revisitable, even though it's like 100 pages long. Then we have a book. This is an anthology edited by Alice Crawford. I love this book. This is The Meaning of the Library. A cultural history of libraries going back 200 years, going back, basically, I mean, there are nods to earlier histories, but this basically goes back to as far as libraries have the form that we recognize them today. And ranging far afield and bringing in a whole bunch of great viewpoints on the subject. I love books about libraries. I even love them nowadays when they make me feel guilty. That's not terribly hard to make a South Boston Irish Catholic feel guilty, but the books on libraries and their wonder, because they all end up being in wonder, make me feel a little guilty that I don't use a library in my life right now at all. And I keep meaning to change that. Maybe in May I will change that. We shall see. Then we have a book by Jeremy Taylor. I've been arguing this book for 10 years. If you know anything about the subject and you read it, you might argue with it too. This is his book, Not a Chimp. And it is about humans and chimpanzees. And it's about specifically the rubric that I'm sure you've heard, which is that humans and chimpanzees are 99%, 98% similar in their genetic makeup. And Science Denying creationists, fundamentalist Christian creationists of a type who make up 2/3 of the adult population of this country, my country, don't believe that the Earth is round. They don't believe that the Earth rotates around the sun. And they certainly don't believe that chimpanzees and humans have a common ancestor. They believe that all the animals came off Noah's Ark. uh, that rubric has been challenged by such people who have said, well, no, the actual figure, if you don't count junk DNA, if you count only coding areas of DNA, is much lower than 98%. Actually, if you count the areas of the gene that actually matter in terms of heritability and cladistic relationship, the number is even higher than 98%. Almost indistinguishable. And I think that's easy to tell. I think that because I was raised and socialized by a non-primate species. But to me, those two people look virtually identical. To me, that is just a matter of haircut. Almost just a matter of haircut. The ears, the mouth, the nose, the eyes, the hands, everything is exactly the same. Or so close that you'd have to be really picky to notice the difference. And I know that's not true, and I know that, they do look different. But nevertheless, this is a study. The author does not like that whole 99% similar idea, and this book ends up being a bit of a Jeremiad. If you like reading that sort of thing and you're willing to keep your wits about you about modern genetic science, this is fascinating to read. Always fascinating to read an angry book. Then we have Stephen Harding. This is his book, Last to Die. It is a little keyhole history of World War II. This is... It's a social study of World War II. It's also a bit of a biography of the very last man to die in World War II, which you would think would be not only a uselessly petty subject, but also a bit of a morbid one. But Harding does a really good job. This is a really touching book. Very entertaining little footnote book for a larger World War II library. Definitely not just a gimmick. Then we'll do another novel. At least this is a great novel. This is by Maneater Russell, and this is her book, Epitap. This is her novel about the OK Corral, the gunfight at the OK Corral. That those of you outside of America might not know your Old West legendography and whatnot. The OK Canal was a fight between two groups of gunmen. It lasted very little time, no more than 15 minutes. But it immediately took on a legendary status in the West, and a huge number of things have been written about it. It's been filmed a number of times. It even made its way into Star Trek. Mary Doria Russell uses this as her follow-up to her novel Doc, about Doc Holliday, who was part of the gunfight at the OK Corral, and who is the subject of her earlier book. This is even better. That earlier book is terrific. But this is even better. And its portrayal all around is wonderful. Its atmosphere, the weirdly gripping way that she has. But its portrayal of the Earp brothers, Wyatt Earp and his brother, this is just an incredible novel. I don't know where it is. I don't know what has happened to it. Again, this is a bugaboo that I've had for a couple of months now on this channel. These new releases that come out, they get talked about by my own people, by the book chat world, and then they go away. And they were the 9 days wonder of the critical world, but then they go away. No one talks about them anymore. No one reviews the paperback, if there is one. Gradually, they go out of print. They're never put on any kind of school syllabus. They're never put in any kind of commemorative reprint edition. They appear and then they disappear. And the existential crisis in me says that therefore how good or bad they are might mean nothing at all. My whole profession might be utterly meaningless. But of course, that can't be true. So instead, I just wonder about books like this. I just wonder about them. These type of, a decade ago, 5 years ago novels, whether they're critically acclaimed or not, they never show up used anywhere. They were in remainders the year after they were in paperback, but they're never used anywhere. No one knows anything about these things. They come and then they go. No matter what critics say about them. Anyway, if you ever encounter this, it's really, really good. You'll really enjoy it. And then we can finish up this weird random list with Harold Schechter. Harold Schechter is a great true crime writer. And believe you me, I now know how rare that is. That is rare. And here he's writing about 1873. Here he's writing about a famous case from the 1870s. This is his book, Maneater. And it's about a group of men who go into the Colorado Rockies at the wrong time. And trust me, if you don't know your American wildlife landscape, there's precious little good time to go into the Colorado Rockies. The campgrounds and the playgrounds that exist now, they didn't exist then. But the campgrounds and playgrounds that exist now, the very carefully curated hiking trails, okay, maybe. The rest of the Colorado Rockies and the rest of the year, outside of those 2 good months in the spring, no. There's never a good time to go in there. Never. And this group of men did. And only one came out. And it quickly became obvious, investigation quickly made it obvious, that he survived by eating the others. And Schechter does a great job. This guy is good at any kind of true crime. You can put him in the present day, with what I'd like to be a massive magnum opus on the smiley face killers, or you can put him 150 years ago. It's not going to matter. He's really good at this sort of thing. Really good. And people had to go and find the remains of his mates to find out what the chances were. Because if you go off trail, off season in the Colorado Rockies, pretty much everything wants to kill you. And quite a few things are capable of not only killing you, but eating you. You might think when you're way up in the back of beyond, where I have been, I have hiked in the Colorado Rockies endlessly, far, far from where any human beings are, or would ever go, or would ever camp. And when you're in that kind of an environment, you're always thinking about bears. But there's something that I want to remind you, a little piece of hiking lore to wrap up this recommendations video. I want to remind you, when you are out in areas like that, mountain lions are lions. They aren't as big as African lions, but some of them can get almost that big. They are big, immensely powerful, predatory cats. They're lions. It's right there in the name. And there's a little piece of hiking wisdom that I want to impart to you. You don't see the mountain lion, but the mountain lion sees you. They might decide, they almost always will decide, I don't like the look of this. It's got clothes on, it's talking and singing, there are a bunch of them. I don't like the look of this. I'll bide my time. This is not worth it. But they're still watching you. They can still see you. They're watching what you do. They can also eat you. If they choose to, they can eat you. Do not be fooled. If a mountain lion approaches you, for instance, when you're out hiking, it almost certainly won't happen. Like 99.9% won't happen. But every once in a while, especially an adolescent, a big adolescent will get curious. And you might look at them and think, all right, well, this is the biggest cat I've ever seen in my life. I've never even seen a lion at the zoo. I've never seen a cat this big before. But it still doesn't come up to my waist. It doesn't come up to my waist, and it doesn't seem all that heavy. It's not all that big an animal. So I'm not all that worried. You should be worried. You should be worried. And it's just nomenclature. A mountain lion is usually bigger than a full-grown African leopard. And yet you hear the name leopard and you think that is something to be afraid of. Well, they both are something to be afraid of. An adult mountain lion can certainly kill you. If given half a chance, it can certainly kill you. So don't give it that chance. But anyway, there's no wildlife in this book. I just had a digression. The only wildlife in this book is whatever that thing is. Whatever that switch is that flicks and makes people into mass murderers, into serial killers. I don't think Harold Schechter has ever identified that switch. I know not. I have not done it. I'd love to talk to him about it, but that's what this thing is. So if you're not interested, I don't see why you would be, but if you're not interested in true crime, ancient true crime, then don't bother. But otherwise, it's well worth it, as is anything this author writes. And there you go. Just a few more recommendations for you. Book recommendations out of nowhere. So, well, I'll wrap this up and I'll be back.